A car dealership called me. Your husband's sports car is ready for pickup. My stomach dropped. I never knew about any car. There must be a mistake, I said. The salesperson hesitated. It's in your name, ma'am. Panicked, I checked our joint account, completely drained. That evening, I waited outside the dealership. When they arrived, smiling and ready to drive off, their faces dropped as I tossed them a single key. Enjoy your new car. It's the only thing you'll have left. It started with a phone call. I was home, sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, sorting through bills. It was a regular Tuesday. Nothing felt off. Nothing seemed different. Then my phone rang. Hello, is this Mrs. Carter? A polite voice asked. Yes, I said, distracted, still scanning an email from our electric company. This is Mark from Jackson Auto. Just calling to confirm, your husband's Porsche is ready for pickup this evening. 6:30, as scheduled. I frowned, completely thrown off. I'm sorry, what? The Porsche, he repeated. Your husband ordered it a few weeks ago. It's all set, just waiting on pickup. I let out a confused little laugh. There must be a mistake, I said. My husband didn't order a Porsche. A short silence. Then, more carefully this time, the salesperson said, It's in your name, ma'am. I sat there, gripping my phone, feeling like I had misheard. What do you mean, in my name? The guy hesitated. Well, the purchase agreement, the financing, it's all under your name. I assumed you knew. The room around me suddenly felt smaller. Tighter. My heartbeat picked up. I opened my laptop again, this time moving fast, clicking through tabs until I reached my bank's website. My hands were shaking as I typed in my login info. And then, my stomach dropped. Our joint account? Completely drained. Not a few hundred missing. Not a small withdrawal. Everything. Thousands and thousands of dollars, gone. My vision blurred as I stared at the balance. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. I felt like I was underwater, like I couldn't get enough air in my lungs. Ma'am, the guy on the phone asked. Are you still there? I took a shaky breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah, I'm here. I need to call you back. I ended the call before he could say anything else. And then, I sat there, staring at my empty bank account, realizing that my husband, the man I trusted, the man I thought I knew, had done something I never saw coming. For context, my name is Sarah, and I've been married to Brian for 10 years. We lived, in Dallas, Texas. I'm a nurse. Brian owns a small construction business. At least, that's what I thought. Brian has always been good with money. Or at least, that's what he led me to believe. He handled most of our finances, paid the bills, took care of the investments. I never had a reason to doubt him. Until now. With shaking fingers, I clicked into our transaction history. And there it was. A $35,000 wire transfer to Jackson Auto. Another $20,000 pulled out in cash over the last 3 months. My hands felt numb as I scrolled. It wasn't just the car. It was hotel charges. Restaurant bills. Flights. Expensive jewelry from stores I'd never even stepped foot in. I couldn't process it all at once. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like an idiot. And then I saw the final transaction. It wasn't a withdrawal. It was a charge to my credit card. An engagement ring. Not mine. I needed answers. Fast. I forced myself to think. Brian was on a business trip. He was supposed to be in Houston for a big client meeting. I grabbed my phone and opened the Find My app. We shared locations, it was a safety thing. But Brian wasn't in Houston. He was at a resort in Austin. I clicked into the resort's website. 5 stars. Beachfront. Luxury. I felt like I was watching my life unravel in real time. My chest was tight. My hands were cold. I took a screenshot of everything. The transactions. The location. The purchase history. Then, without even thinking, I called his number. It rang. And rang. And then, straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. I sat there, gripping the phone, feeling humiliated. He wasn't just lying to me. He was avoiding me. I swallowed the lump in my throat, opened my laptop again, and did the only thing I could think of. I called my lawyer. After an hour-long conversation, I had a plan. First, I froze our joint account. There wasn't much left, but I made sure Brian couldn't touch another dime. Then, I made another call. "Hi, Mark," I said, forcing a pleasant tone. "I just wanted to confirm the pickup time for the Porsche. My husband is supposed to get it at 6:30, right?" "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Perfect," I replied. "I'll be there early. Just to make sure everything goes smoothly." I ended the call and waited. I had one last thing to do. I checked our home security cameras. We had a doorbell cam, and I could access the footage from my phone. And at 2:37 p.m., I saw her. Jessica. She was in our house. A tall, blonde woman. Walking around my living room like she owned the place. Wearing my robe. Drinking from my favorite coffee mug. Sitting in my house with my husband's money and my husband's stolen time. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't scared. I was pissed off. And by tonight, Brian was going to regret every single decision he had made. At exactly 6:15 p.m., I parked across the street from Jackson Auto. I didn't have to wait long. At 6:30 on the dot, a black Uber pulled up. Brian stepped out first. He looked relaxed. Excited. Jessica followed, laughing about something, clinging onto his arm. I could see it all, the way he smiled at her, the way he leaned in when she whispered something in his ear. He didn't look like a man who had just drained his wife's bank account. He looked like a man who thought he had one. I watched them walk into the dealership, watched the salesman greet them, watched as they were led toward the car. I felt my heartbeat slow. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I stepped out of my car, walked toward them, and cleared my throat. Brian turned. His face drained of color the second he saw me. I smiled. "Hope you love your new car," I said, holding up one single key. "Because it's the only thing you have left." Brian just stood there, mouth slightly open, like his brain couldn't process what was happening. Jessica looked at me, then at him, then back at me, slowly letting go of his arm. The dealership manager was confused. Mr. Carter, is everything okay?" I let the silence hang in the air. Let him sweat. Then I stepped forward, my heels clicking against the polished showroom floor, and dropped the key into his hand. "Enjoy your car," I said, voice calm, but ice cold. "It's all you have left." Brian blinked fast, like if he did it enough times, I'd magically disappear. "Sarah, what the hell is this?" "You tell me," I said, folding my arms. "I mean, it is my car, after all. You were nice enough to put everything in my name." The color drained from his face. Jessica took a step back. "Wait, what?" Brian's jaw clenched. "Sarah, we are not doing this here." "Oh, we absolutely are," I said. "Right here. Right now." Jessica scoffed, looking thoroughly annoyed. "Babe, what is she talking about?" Brian whipped around so fast his jacket flared out. "Go wait outside." Jessica narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me?" "Jessica," he said through gritted teeth, "just go to the car." For the first time since she showed up, she actually looked uncomfortable. I could see her doing the mental math. How much did she really know about him? About his money? I smiled at her. "You should go," I said sweetly. "I'd hate for you to hear what's coming next." Her eyes flickered between us, and then, without another word, she turned on her heel and walked out. The second she was gone, Brian grabbed my arm and pulled me aside. "What the hell are you doing?" he hissed, voice low. "Are you trying to ruin me?" I laughed, actually laughed, right in his face. "Ruin you? Oh, honey. I'm just getting started." He took a slow breath, probably counting to 10 in his head like he always did when he was pissed. "Sarah, listen. I can fix this, okay? I'll transfer the money back. We can talk. I cut in. "Like how you talked to the real estate agent last week when you tried to list our house. Like how you talked to the bank when you pulled our savings. Or maybe, Brian, you mean like how you talked to the jeweler when you bought a ring for your little girlfriend?" His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I nodded. That's what I thought. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thick envelope. "Here," I said, shoving it into his chest. "What is this?" he asked, already hesitant. "Divorce papers," I said. "Pre-signed. Filed. Congratulations, you just lost everything." Brian looked like he was going to be sick. "Sarah," he said, a desperate edge creeping into his voice, "don't do this." I tilted my head. "Don't do what?" "Hold you accountable?" His breathing was uneven now. Look, and then, like a gift from the universe, the dealership manager cut in. Mr. Carter? Brian turned, eyes dark. What? The manager smiled apologetically. It looks like your financing didn't go through after all. We ran a final check, and, well, there's nothing left in your account. The air shifted. Brian's head snapped toward me, full of realization. You didn't, he whispered. I smiled, taking a slow step toward him. I did. It was one thing to drain our account and buy a car in my name. It was another thing entirely to think I wouldn't burn it all down. You thought you could blindside me, Brian? I asked, keeping my voice soft. You thought I'd just, what? Cry and move on. Brian looked trapped, and he knew it. The manager cleared his throat. So, unfortunately, we'll have to cancel the purchase. But, seeing as how the paperwork is in Mrs. Carter's name, we'd be happy to move forward with her instead. I smiled. That won't be necessary. I don't want it either. Brian let out a sharp breath, hands shaking. So, I said, looking at him. What now? He didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Brian stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight, silent. His whole face had changed. Before, he looked angry. Now, he looked scared. And I wasn't done. I turned back to the dealership manager. Actually, I said, my voice light, on second thought, I'd like to keep the car after all. Brian's head snapped toward me so fast I thought he'd get whiplash. You can't, oh, but I can, I interrupted, smiling. And I will. Since, as you so kindly arranged, it's legally mine. The manager looked uncomfortable but nodded. Yeah. That's true. Brian took a step toward me. Sarah, you don't even like sports cars. I shrugged. I do now. That was twist number 1. Then, before Brian could say anything else, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and suddenly looked like he'd seen a ghost. I folded my arms. Who is it, Brian? No answer. The phone buzzed again. And again. And then? Jessica walked back inside. But she wasn't alone. Another woman was standing next to her. A woman I had never seen before. And she did not look happy. Jessica stormed over to Brian, shoving her phone in his face. Who the hell is this? She demanded, pointing at the screen. Brian blinked, looking between the two women, panicked. I don't. You don't what, Brian? Jessica snapped. Know her? Because she just sent me screenshots. Screenshots of you and her. Brian opened his mouth, then closed it. Jessica turned to me, eyes wild. How many? How many other women are there? I raised an eyebrow. Oh, sweetheart, I don't count trash. You'd have to ask him. Jessica whipped back around, getting in Brian's face. Are you serious? She yelled. You told me you loved me. And then, the other woman stepped forward. Wow, she said, arms crossed. That's funny. Because he told me the same thing. Brian's entire body stiffened. The air in the dealership turned dead silent. Even the manager took a step back. Jessica looked between me and the new woman, shaking her head. No. No. This has to be a mistake. I let out a short laugh. Oh, sweetie, we are way past mistakes. The new woman crossed her arms. Brian, say something. Brian's lips parted, but nothing came out. Jessica shook her head again. Oh my God. Oh my God. Then, suddenly, she slapped him. Hard. The crack echoed through the whole damn dealership. Brian stumbled backward, blinking fast like his brain had just short-circuited. You are such a disgusting piece of garbage. Jessica screamed. You let me, God, I moved in with you. I thought we were going to get married. The new woman laughed, actually laughed, and pulled out her phone. Oh, honey, she said, scrolling through her screen. You thought you were getting married? She turned the phone around. It was a picture of an engagement ring. The same engagement ring I saw on my credit card. Jessica turned completely white. And then? She ran out. Brian watched her go, eyes huge, but he didn't chase after her. Because the new woman was still standing there. She smiled at him, slow and mean. You didn't think I'd find out, did you? Brian swallowed hard. Melissa. That was her name. I made a mental note. Save it, she cut him off. You owe me $15,000. Brian flinched. Melissa, listen, you can what? She snapped. Lie? Steal? Cheat? Oh wait, you already did that. So let me make this real simple, Brian. She stepped closer. You have 1 week to pay me back. Or I'm pressing charges. Brian went still. Melissa gave him one last glare, then turned and walked out. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I turned back to Brian. So, I said, my voice syrupy sweet, how's your day going? Brian didn't answer. He couldn't. Brian stood there, frozen, his entire world collapsing around him in real time. Jessica was gone. Melissa had just threatened legal action. The dealership manager was awkwardly shifting on his feet, pretending he wasn't witnessing a man's life get completely torched in public. And me? I was just getting started. Brian finally turned to me, breathing hard, his face a mix of panic and pure rage. You happy now? He hissed, voice low. You just humiliated me in front of everyone. I let out a short laugh. Oh, I think you did that all by yourself. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You don't get it, do you? He gestured around the dealership, just ruined everything. I was handling it. I scoffed. Handling it? You emptied our account, lied to me, cheated, and somehow thought I wouldn't find out? Oh yeah, Brian, you were really on top of things. He ran a hand through his hair, breathing even harder now. You don't understand, Sarah. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I needed more money. For the business. I had debts, bullshit, I cut him off. Your business was fine. You weren't paying off debts. You were living some sick little fantasy, luxury vacations, gifts for your side pieces, and a brand new Porsche. Brian's jaw clenched. I was gonna fix it. Oh, like how you were gonna tell Melissa about Jessica? I shot back. Or how you were gonna tell me about all of them. A flicker of something crossed his face. A hesitation. And suddenly, I knew. There was more. I tilted my head. How many, Brian? His lips parted slightly. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. How many women? Silence. I let out a humorless laugh. Jesus Christ. It's more than 2, isn't it? Brian turned away, rubbing his face. Sarah, please, but I was done. I pulled my phone out and opened my email. Good news, Brian, I said, my voice sharp. The divorce papers? Already filed. With our prenup? I get everything. His head snapped up. What? Oh yeah, I said, scrolling through my inbox. See, I always thought prenups were just for rich assholes who wanted to protect their money. But my lawyer, the one you always made fun of me for keeping on retainer, she made sure it worked both ways. Brian went still. Since you violated the infidelity clause, I continued, I get the house. I get my half of our savings. And because you were so generous in putting things in my name? I grinned. I get the Porsche, too. The silence that followed was absolute. Brian's breathing changed. For the first time since this entire thing started, he looked afraid. His voice broke. You can't, oh, but I can, I said softly. And I already did. Then, to twist the knife, I reached into my purse and pulled out another document. One more thing, I said, holding it up. I also went ahead and reported your business to the IRS. Brian's face drained of all color. You didn't, he whispered. Oh, I did, I confirmed. Imagine my surprise when I found out you'd been hiding income. Underreporting earnings. Fudging tax numbers. I smiled sweetly. You know, they really don't like that. Brian stumbled back, actually stumbled, like the weight of it all had physically hit him. I tilted my head. So, tell me, Brian, how's your day going? His hands clenched into fists. His breath was ragged. He looked like he wanted to scream, cry, punch something, and run away all at the same time. And then, he lost it. You think you're better than me, he snapped, stepping forward. You think you're some kind of saint? I took a step back, suddenly on high alert. Brian had never gotten physical before. But the way his hands were shaking, the way his jaw was locked, I wasn't taking chances. The dealership manager must have sensed it too, because he cleared his throat loudly. Sir, he said, stepping between us. I think you should leave. Brian's eyes were wild now. Oh, screw this. Screw all of this. He threw his hands up. Fine. You want to take everything? Go ahead. You'll be just like every other bitter, lonely woman who thinks she won. I held his gaze, steady. No, Brian, I said, voice calm. I already won. He stared at me for a long, long moment. And then? He turned and walked out. In the weeks that followed, Brian's life fell apart. Jessica was gone. Melissa sued him. The IRS came knocking. Turns out, fraud isn't a great idea when you're already financially drowning. He tried calling me, left voicemail after voicemail. Begging. Screaming. Apologizing. I never answered. I sold the house. I kept the Porsche. And one day, about 2 months later, I was driving through town when I saw him. Brian. At a bus stop. His hair was unkempt. His face looked older. He wasn't wearing one of his tailored suits. He looked small. For a split second, I wondered if I should feel bad. If I should pity him. But then I thought about every night I cried, feeling like I was losing my mind. Every moment I doubted myself. Every second I spent thinking I wasn't enough. And just like that, the guilt disappeared. Because Brian had made his choices. And I had made mine. So, I drove off. And I didn't look back.